And our first speaker is Dr. Chowdhury. He's a assistant professor of nematology at the University of Georgia in Tifton.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Today, I'll talk about plant parasitic nematodes infesting Georgia's vegetable fields. Well, before I do that, let me take a minute to introduce myself. Probably yesterday was the first time you guys may have heard about me. So I hail from a small country in South Asia called Bangladesh, and in 2010, I came to US to pursue a bachelor's degree in microbiology. Since then, I joined the Department of Plant Pathology of North Dakota State University to do PhD, and my doctoral dissertation was on plant parasitic nematodes infesting corn and soybean fields of North Dakota. Since then, I had a short stint. In 2021, I joined North Carolina State University as a postdoctoral researcher, and then I got the opportunity to come to UGA as an assistant professor. At UGA, I joined in August of this year, and my program has the goal of proactively finding solutions to existing and emerging plant parasitic nematode-related issues that producers of Georgia and Southeast United States face during crop production. And my program is focused towards vegetable crops and cotton. So, what are nematodes? Well, nematodes are multicellular roundworms and that have existed for billions of years. They're actually animals. They're more closer to us humans than fungi is to nematodes or humans. So they're one of the most ubiquitous animals on Earth. One of my favorite quotes about nematodes essentially says that if you remove all the mass from Earth and just leave nematodes, you will see the shapes and forms of mountains and valleys and oceans just because the amount of nematodes that are remaining, they form the shape. So some of them are plant parasitic, some of them are non-plant parasitic. The way to differentiate the plant parasitic from non-plant parasitic is when you look at it under a microscope, you can see a spear-like stylet in their mouth. It's a spear-like shaft that we call stylet that they use to punch a hole in the root system of their host tissue. They use that to extract nutrient using that tube, and some of them actually use that to punch a hole and through which it goes inside the root system. And the way I like to explain it is basically they make a home there and make babies because they colonize the root system and starts to swell up with many eggs inside them. That's an adult female of root knot nematode there. Some of them are ectoparasitic, meaning they remain mobile throughout their life, and they're vermiform, meaning they're snake-like when they're mobile. Some of them lose that mobility, become sedentary, and as you can see, they are called endoparasitic because they go inside the root system. Some are in between as well. So why is plant parasitic nematode research important? Why did UGA and even the GFGA here spend considerable effort and resources to bring me here? Well, nematodes, plant parasitic nematodes, are responsible for $100 to $157 billion of yield loss worldwide. And in the US alone, $6 to $8 billion of yield loss occurs annually. And important thing to note is that this yield loss, the extent of damage, really depends on the type of plant parasitic nematode in your field. For example, root knot nematode infesting a field, it's not really uncommon to see about as much as 50% yield loss, especially down here in the southeast. Whereas if you have spiral nematode in your field at low population numbers, the damage potential is almost negligible. Important to note that losses also depend on the host species. For example, you have a brassica crop like cabbage or cabbage, then they are more resilient to nematodes than your solanaceous crop like tomatoes and peppers. Broccoli is another brassica crops. And the nematode species, even among root knot nematodes, there are some species that are more devastating and virulent than other species. The soil type that we have here in the southeast is more sandy. Nematodes prefer that compared to something up in North Dakota, let's say, where the soil is a little bit more clay. And the environment with the multi-cropping cycle environment that we have here in the southeast, nematode populations are a bigger problem. And they thrive in this sandy environment, of more warmer environment. Now, these losses often go unnoticed. That's because the symptoms caused by nematodes are not unique, because these symptoms can be caused by anything that harms the plant, because that reduces their nematodes reduces their nutrients, and symptoms caused by nematodes are a result of nutrient deficiency. So, at least above ground symptoms. Sometimes you also have yield loss without any above ground symptoms. So it is important to determine the incidence, the abundance, and distribution of plant parasitic nematodes infesting Georgia's fields. And to that end, I am going to talk about a project titled Find ME, a CRI project with an objective to survey Georgia's cropping fields. This project was actually for Georgia spearheaded by my predecessor, Dr. Abu Fazal Haji Hassani, and he had some good research done through that. So to achieve that objective, about 302 fields across 39 counties were surveyed. From 2019 to 2022, August of 2022, we did about 80 fields after I joined the program. And our excellent network of extension agents collected majority of these samples. And the crops in those fields that were surveyed were solanaceous crops, like, as I said, tomatoes and peppers, cucurbitaceous crops, cucumbers, brassica, fabaceous, allium is onions, fabaceous is beans, leafy greens, and rotational crops. Of vegetables, common rotational crops of vegetables like cotton, peanut, and tobacco. We detected about 8 genera of nematodes in these fields. They were root knot nematode, ring nematode, spiral, stubby root, reniform, root lesion, lance, and cyst nematodes. Now, we found that 66% of these fields were infested with root knot nematode. And an interesting thing there is that 14% had more than one species of root knot nematodes. Now, root knot nematodes are actually considered as the most devastating group of plant parasitic nematodes. And you can see that's a field, a tomato field, where root knot nematodes, you can see the galls, it's pretty gnarly. So in these fields, majority of them had Meloidigine incognita, which is southern root knot nematode. There was Meloidigine javanica in smaller numbers, that is Javanese root knot nematode, Meloidigine arenaria, that is a peanut. And some fields, as you can see here, had both southern root knot nematode and Meloidigine arenaria. And some fields even had all 3 of these nematodes. But 2 fields had a nematode called Meloidigine interlobii. Its common name is guava root knot nematode. Those 2 fields are one is in Tetnall County, one is in Lowndes County. Now, I'd like you to bring back to the title of this project, which is Focused Investigation on Distribution and Management of Meloidigine Interlobii. Now, what's all this fuss about? Why is there a multi-state, multi-million-dollar SCRI project focused on this nematode alone? Well, to do that, let me talk about the three major pillars of nematode management. That is host resistance, crop rotation, and nematicides. When it comes to host resistance, root knot nematodes being as devastating, widespread, and wide host range as they are, with considerable amount of effort, resistance has been developed into commercial varieties, right? That includes tomatoes and peppers. This guava root knot nematode overcomes this resistance and reproduces on these resistant varieties well. To this day, there is no commercial varieties that has been developed with resistance against this nematode. And importantly, this nematode is highly virulent, meaning it reproduces rapidly. For crop rotation, it has a wider host range. Root knot nematodes in general have a wide host range, but this nematodes has a wider host range than most root knot nematodes, including vegetable crops such as tomatoes, peppers, watermelon, cucumber, carrots, sweet potatoes, etc., and numerous row crops as well, including cotton, tobacco, and soybean. Numerous weeds are also host to this nematode. And it's alarmingly, this nematode is spreading throughout United States, southeastern United States, not United States, southeastern. That includes 5 states. It's very widespread in North Carolina, Florida. In South Carolina, it is becoming widespread, and now we have detected it in Georgia recently. Now, when it comes to nematicides, I'd like to talk about a research that has been done by Dr. Adrian Gorney and Dr. Lena Quesada's team at North Carolina on sweet potatoes. And you can see here, I'd like to bring your attention to 1,3-dichloropropane, fluopyram, and fluoxanidolizine. Sorry, I butchered that, but it's hard, that one. But these 3 did pretty good. One surprising is Celebro. It's a new chemistry. I think they are going to thinking about labeling it this year. It's already available in Canada. It's a greener chemistry. And another thing I'd like to bring you to your attention is that you can see against Meloidigine incognita, which is southern root knot nematode, Telone 2 had very good efficacy, but it had slightly less efficacy against Meloidigine interlobii. But it was the same for when it came to Vellum Prime and Celebro. They had the same efficacy against both the nematodes. Another interesting thing to show here is that Nimitz is pretty fair against Meloidigine incognita, but against guava root knot, it was poor. But it is important to note this is on sweet potato in North Carolina. Does not mean it will exactly translate for Georgia as well. So let's talk about management. Well, if you think about management, prevention is the best medicine. There is no questions about that. Nematodes by themselves only move a small distance. So for long distance to occur, it is typically facilitated by us humans. For example, for that, you need to have clean seeds to avoid that. Slips transplant, get your transplants or seeds from reputable sources. These 2 fields acquired sweet potato slips from North Carolina, both the Lowndes County field and the Tatnall field, so that tells you something. It's very important to visually inspect your transplants and your seeds to see if there's any galls, right? Galls are tumor-like growth in the root system. It's the easiest way to think of it. Very important to sanitize your equipment if you go between your fields. That's one of the main ways nematodes go from one field to another and getting widespread. And it's important to regularly sample your fields. It has many benefits. If you already have this nematode, now what do you do? Well, rotate with non-host crops. Corn, peanuts, sorghum, small grains are non-host crops. Apply nematicides and fumigants, you know that. And monitor your crops for damage, which is basically, again, saying sample your field and assess risk. For root knot nematodes, compared to other nematodes, is a good thing. It's like at the end of the season, pull out a couple of your plants, see if you see any galls in the roots. That'll tell you something. So, with that, I am early, but before that, I want to say, here are some leaflets. One of them is for home gardens, and the other one is for commercial production. These nematodes have been seen in some grocery stores as well, especially when it's come to sweet potatoes. So that's why we have developed something for home gardens as well, how to avoid it and what to do. There is a website dedicated for this project, so you can definitely, there's the link to it here. Definitely go through. And there's a card also with my information, and it's here as well. I am here to serve. I'm very excited to be here. I think it's an excellent opportunity, so please feel free to reach out anytime. I have an open door policy. Any questions? With that, I'd like to thank everyone for being here, the conference and the Grower Association of Georgia Fruits and Vegetables for giving us this opportunity, and the FindAMI project team and a Specialty Crop Research Initiative for funding this project. Thank you. Any questions?
Does anyone have any questions for Dr. Chowdhury?
Yes. So she asked, what is the testing process for guava root knot nematode? Is that correct? Well, for root knot nematodes, to genus level, you can identify them under a microscope, but for, or you can see the galls. But for identifying to species level, we use species-specific molecular diagnostic methods. So DNA sequencing, species-specific PCR. UGA Tifton recently hired a molecular diagnostician. So we do have the tools available to identify the species.
Any other questions?
Yes, sir.
When you do the crop rotation or suppression, what length of time are you talking about? Can I plant the sorghum and then plant whatever I want next year, or do I need to wait 2 or 3 years?
So that's a very good question. What is the rotation cycle, or how long you have to rotate before you can come back to that susceptible crop?
That's my question.
Exactly. So for guava root knot nematode, we're still doing the research, but what I can tell you is it really depends on the population you have in your field. You have a high population, you really need more than 4 or 5 years of cycles if you have a very high population. But if you have lower population, 1 to 2 year cycle, 2 to 3 year cycle, 1 to 2 years, never good. 2 to 3 year cycle, it will do you good. Now, completely eradicating a nematode from a soil is not something we have gotten to there. We can do is suppress it, and that's where we are getting.
Any other questions?
Yes?
Is Rhodophilus civilis in the United States?
Rhodophilus civilis. Yes, that is called a burrowing nematode, I believe, and it's bananas. It's a big problem. It's not a big problem for here in the United States. Maybe in Florida. Florida has everything. And so maybe in Florida, I'm not sure. We are not that concerned because I don't hear about it often. But we do learn about it because it's a big problem, especially in South Asia, Southeast Asia, because this nematode is pretty devastating, kind of makes the plant go boop.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? All right, well, we'll move on. Thank you, Dr. Chowdhury.